and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. My name is Scott Daly, and I'm joined, as always, by my fellow disruptor. It's Mr. Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
Oh, it's going great, Scott. I'm prepared to just totally smash the system. Just do the sort of thing that everyone in my life and my loved ones say I shouldn't do. They're begging me not to do it, actually, but I'm a disruptor. I'm going to do it. I'm going to smash the system.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. That's why we're friends, even though I am one of those people telling you not to do the thing that you're going to do.
Like specifically, I'm gonna smash up this electrical transformer with a crowbar right now. That's what I'm gonna do.
I mean, that is that's disruption.
Yep.
This week on the show, it is our final episode of the year 2022. We're doing another episode of what we call the Doof Canon, a list of the greatest films ever, as decided by our listeners. Matt, explain how this whole thing works.
Well, once a month, those individuals that donate to us on Patreon at the Council of Doof level get to collectively decide on a movie for the community to consider for entrance into the Doof Canon. Scott and I will meet, talk about the movie, and then present our case for why it should or should not be admitted.
But as always, we are leaving that final decision up to you guys listening at home. So stick around, listen to our arguments, and then find the link in the show notes to cast your vote. This month, we did ask our council to pick some 2022 movies specifically. We were thinking that since it's the last episode of the year, rather, it'd be fun to look back at the movies of this year and have people pick their favorites, and we could see, are any of these movies worthy of entrance into the canon? So with that in mind, Matt, what did our council nominate for December 2022?
This month, the council has nominated 2022's Glass Onion.
Oh, the sequel to Rian Johnson's Knives Out, which was, I don't remember when it came out. It was pre-pandemic time, so it all runs together. It was one of those many years prior to the pandemic.
Yes, the before times.
So we will be talking all about Glass Onion. Then at the end of the episode, we will be voting ourselves and then turning it over to you guys. And then, Matt, before we wrap everything up for the year, I just wanted to do a quick top 5 between the two of us. Top 5 things that we enjoyed this year. It doesn't necessarily have to be things from this year, but things that we enjoyed in this year. I don't like doing traditional top 5 lists. I think they're boring and everyone's ends up all the same. So I want to do something a little different.
Sounds good.
All right, Matt, let's get into it. Let's talk all about Glass Onion.
I've invited you all to my island.
Hi.
Because tonight, a murder will be committed. My murder.
Once you're dead, will we still be able to talk to you?
Yeah, I'm not playing dead the whole weekend, dude.
Well, this is truly delightful.
Across the island, I've hidden clues. You will have to closely observe each other. If anyone can name the killer, that person wins our game. Any questions?
Halle Berry, that has a kick.
Matt, what is this movie all about?
Famed Southern detective Benoit Blanc travels to Greece for his latest case.
Southern detective. This movie was written and directed by Rian Johnson. It stars Daniel Craig, Ed Norton, Kate Hudson, Janelle Monáe, Catherine Hahn, Leslie Odom Jr., Dave Bautista, and just a whole bunch of other cameos that are just delightful every time they show up. Matt, what did you think about Glass Onion?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very fun and very funny. It definitely isn't like my favorite movie of all time, which would, just in case you were wondering.
Sure.
It's a good movie. I think I enjoyed that it was silly and whimsical and fun, and that it kind of prioritized you having fun over most other things. And just on the whole, I watched it with my family for Christmas. We all laughed. We all just had a great time with it. And overall, I enjoyed this movie.
Sweet.
How about you? What did you think?
I hated it. No, I'm just kidding. We were talking beforehand about how we hadn't spoken once about this movie, and it'd be really funny if we both came with the exact opposite takes. No, I really, really enjoyed this movie. I was thinking about this. I don't know if we ever had a conversation about Knives Out. Did we? I don't think we did an episode on that.
No, I don't think we did. Which is one manner in which I feel sort of unprepared to talk about this movie, because I don't really have a lot of analytical opinions about it right now. Like I watched it and I laughed, and now I'm here to talk about it with you. So yeah, and you know, Ryan Johnson, it's interesting. We have talked about other stuff Ryan Johnson has done. But this feels really different from all of that. Like
Yeah.
this is almost, I was thinking about this actually before I sat down. I was like, how do you classify this movie? Because like, well, there's an obvious sense in which the movie's a whodunit, but like, I would be tempted to classify it as a comedy prior to classifying it as a whodunit. It really is trying to be funny more than it's trying to be sort of your ultimate form of the whodunit mystery. Now, you know, it is that too, but it's just
Yeah.
it's a very funny movie.
It is. I mean, and it's interesting because I think the original Knives Out was pretty funny too, but I think like it feels like it wasn't necessarily built that way. It just kind of was a result of bringing those people together to do that film at that time. Really played up the funniness of it, and I think it feels like Ryan Johnson really leaned into it in this movie. And I'm not complaining. I think it works, but it is a really interesting thing to compare this movie to the original Knives Out and the ways in which they're very similar, and then like like you said, the ways which they're very different types of films.
Yeah.
I liked the humor. I appreciated the humor. I thought it was great. I think that Benoit Blanc might go down as the character we most remember Daniel Craig for, which is insane because he played James Bond. But I love this character, and it's clear to me how much fun he's having playing this character. And I thought, like, if we just keep doing this thing where we bring back Daniel Craig and then also get this murderer's row of character actors to come into a movie with him and just do whatever, I will continue to love them no matter what the story or anything is. But, you know, outside of that, I do think what Ryan Johnson is doing with this movie and both these movies, I think he's playing with structure in really interesting ways, because this is a movie that does not have a typical structure. It does not have a typical mystery movie structure. And I think that's very true of the first Knives Out as well. That movie like sets out to upend everything we thought or expected about being in a mystery story. Like Knives Out, the original is one in which we find out who did it the first 20 minutes of the movie. And then we're like, oh, okay, this is going to be different now. And then it cleverly manages to zig and then eventually zag back to actually being a pretty standard whodunit by the end. And this is a movie that does a similar thing. And I don't know, we didn't talk about this, but do we want to do this broadly and then move into spoilers later? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I was just going to ask the same exact question. We can speak broadly for a little bit longer, I think, because what
Sure.
I was going to say in response to that is, you know, for better or worse, Ryan Johnson loves to play with expectations, and that I think that comes into play very strongly when it comes to structure in his Knives Out movies in particular, where just as you say, it's like this time and the order of events become totally decoupled from the order in which you receive information, and which is kind of cool, because when you think about it, there's no reason why the order of events and the order in which you receive information have to be the same thing, just in general in storytelling.
Yeah.
And he really plays with that idea, but he plays with subverting expectations in many ways in this movie. And I'll say vaguely now that just like the way certain characters are set up turns out to not be at all what you end up feeling about them. And that's just classic Ryan Johnson stuff. Yeah.
I mean, every character is constantly Luke Skywalker throwing away the lightsaber, I think is the clearest, easiest way of saying it. He's just going to do that constantly. And you're right. I mean, I think there are moments, like, without getting too much into detail, there's a moment in this movie that I was kind of briefly bummed that we weren't getting the movie I thought we were getting. And I think that happens consistently in Ryan Johnson movies, where you're like, oh, I thought this was going to be this. I thought this was going to be a movie that takes place on an island where a rich benefactor has invited all these people, and then there's a murder and we have to solve it. And it's not that that's not what the movie is, but also that's not what the movie is, you know? And there's always that, there's always that brief moment when you're in the middle of that, where you're kind of go like, aw, I think I wanted that movie. But then the thing that I love about Ryan Johnson is he eventually goes, no, you'll like this better, trust me. And he always manages to pull that off at the end to me.
Yeah. He kind of gives you what you didn't know you wanted, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. So I think overall we're really into this. I think all the performances are great. I think Janelle Monáe is an actress that I think it has to shoulder a pretty heavy load in this film. And I think she does a really great job playing the character of Andy. And then of course everyone else I just love. I love Dave Bautista. I love Ed Norton. I haven't seen enough Ed Norton lately, and he's having the time of his life in this movie.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
But yeah, anything else you wanted to say before we get super specific, which in a movie like this is super dangerous, folks. So if you haven't checked it out yet, anything else, Matt?
No, I think a lot of spoilery things are piling up on my tongue right now. That we need to move over there before they start falling out.
Yeah. Okay. So on to spoilers from now on. So the big structural, twist here, I guess we could call it, is we spend the entire first hour of the movie basically being set up that someone has mysteriously invited Benoit Blanc onto this island, and then we perceive that there is a murder. It's the murder of Dave Bautista's character, and then after that, the murder of Janelle Monáe's character, and then we do a flashback where we learn that everything we just watched for the past hour is not what we thought it was, and actually something else, something deeper is going on. We have an identical twin plot line, which is just like, this is one thing I love about this, Matt. This is a lot of the stuff is just vintage, like Agatha Christie-esque murder mystery. Like, I don't know how much Agatha Christie you've read, but it's like sometimes she gets really cheesy with it, where they have like unexpected twins, ta-da, and it's fun. And I love the way he's drawing upon these tropes and using them, but he's always tweaking them and turning them and twisting them and examining them in fun ways.
Yeah, this is what I meant about it being whimsical and fun primarily. What's funny is I haven't read Agatha Christie, but what this movie actually reminded me of, and I don't know if you'll get this reference because it's an obscure children's book, but it was a children's book called The 11th Hour that, my mom would read to me when I was a kid, and it's basically a birthday party being thrown in an elaborate mansion by, in this case, it's by an elephant, and he's invited all of his animal friends. And the mystery is that, like, partway through the book, the elaborate feast gets eaten while no one's paying attention. And the mystery is who ate the feast. And what's funny is it's like, trope wise, this maps so well onto this movie, actually, because it's like birthday party, overly elaborate setting, which is just kind of fun. Like the overly ostentatious nature of the setting is alluring to you in various ways. And then there's like, everybody has their own motives, right? It's just such a great concept. And he allows it, like you just said, he allows it to be a little bit silly and throw in these elements of, double, agendas and just layers of like, pretty much everybody in the movie has like an ulterior motive, and you change your opinion of them like 3 times by the end of the movie. It's that's part of what I was getting at with the subverting expectations thing, by the way, is I think that's like one of his primary writing instincts is like, all right, here's how I want you to feel about this character when you meet them, or even before you meet them. And then here's how I want things to evolve as I reveal more information. Like Ed Norton's a perfect example, his character, because before you meet him, I didn't know it was going to be Ed Norton. So I was picturing like some, wise older gentleman, idiosyncratic and eccentric genius inventor archetype who maybe walks with a cane and is very wise, and then he's going to be murdered somehow. And it's like, no, it's Ed Norton. And that's like a huge contrast to my expectations of who this character is going to be,
Sure. Yeah, and I think a lot of people are doing this already, at making very direct comparisons between the Ed Norton character in this movie and Elon Musk. Of course, this movie was written before Musk bought Twitter, and I'm 99% sure that this character was not written to be any specific person, but that's what the most people are going to do, just because it happens when this movie came out and everything going on with all the Twitter stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think it's much more of a broad kind of characterization of tech bro industry in general, right? Super rich tech bros.
Yeah, I mean, I think just Musk is not actually known for like living ostentatiously, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas like that's like the huge point of this movie is that this guy this he has this obscene level of luxury. So I only
yeah.
say like, yeah, it's a generic like overly rich person who doesn't really deserve it because they basically just pay other people to do things for them and then take all the credit.
It's amazing how well that's layered into the movie. And this is what I mean by how Johnson really plays with structure and how he does it really successfully. Because I don't know about you, I certainly, it's not that I noticed something was weird with Miles throughout the course of the movie. Like I don't think I consciously picked up on any of the ticks that Benoit lays out for us in his speech at the end, right? Where he's saying the wrong words or using words improperly. I don't think I consciously picked up on any of that, but I do very have this distinct feeling that like something was going on with him weirdly.
Mhm.
And then like there's the things about the doc and yeah, there's if the one I love the set work in this movie is so incredible because you have the one picture of Ed Norton, which I'm pretty sure is just like a painting of his character from Fight Club that he has like in the middle of this room, which is wild to even think about that. But I think I also read that there's some other very famous pieces of artwork that are just turned upside down. So like to show that the guy doesn't actually have any appreciation of art at all. Like he's just putting all the stuff in this room because it's expensive and that's it. And that's his whole understanding of everything. So I mean, there is a really fun part though. I love when he hands the glass to Dave Bautista's character that eventually ends up poisoning and killing him, or
Mhm.
or not poisoning, rather just pineapple juice. Because I do have this very distinct memory. The first time I watched this movie, I saw him hand the glass to Dave Bautista because that's the way the scene plays the first time you see it. Ryan Johnson didn't break any rules there. The first time you see the scene, he is the exact same cut as when you see it the third time when we're going
Uh-huh.
back over it. And what did you really see? It's that sequence. He hands the cup. It looks like he's about to set it down on the table, but then he hands it to Dave Bautista. He picks it up. I saw that and I clocked that. And then the thing that happened to me, the viewer, is the same thing that happened to the characters in the story, which is then he comes back and says, "No, I put it on the table. He must have picked it up." And you just kind of go, "Oh, I must have made a mistake then. I
Uh-huh.
must have seen it wrong." And you just kind of push it off. And it's kind of incredible. Like he's kind of again and again and again rolling the dice that you are not going to fully pick up on all this weirdness, all this detail and stuff that's going on around it before he wants to pull back the curtain and reveal what the second act of this whole story is going to be. I think it's really remarkable the way he manages that and manages you, the audience, because it worked perfectly on me. Like it's not that I didn't catch it, but I definitely like didn't fully catch it,
Yeah, sure. I don't think like was paying attention to that detail when that happened, and so it just went right by me. But I will basically agree with you that the movie worked on me. It sort of had me like putty in its hands in the sense that it was controlling what I was thinking and what I was expecting from moment to moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna like reframe what I said about Ryan Johnson loves subverting expectations. That's true, but I think that's just a particular instance of the fact that he likes and he's really good at controlling expectations.
Mm-hmm.
He's aware of the expectations that he's setting up via his storytelling, and he's very precise about the expectations that he's setting up. And sometimes he subverts them. Sometimes he just executes them or takes advantage of what he has set up. Right? Because even something as simple as seeing somebody hand off a glass turns into an
Yeah.
expectation, which can then be even like contradicted and played with in various ways. It's just sort of real. I actually admire his deep interest in what I see as being the fundamentals of storytelling, which is manipulating expectations.
Yeah. Well, and you have to have this really great confidence and understanding in how all these things work. You have to understand what people bring with them when they go see a movie that's called a whodunit, right? This is especially, with the knowledge that you're going into this one knowing that probably most people that have seen this movie, if not all, have seen the first one as well. So you're carrying the expectations you have of a murder mystery, but you're also carrying the expectations that you have of a Rian Johnson murder mystery. And so that's another level of challenge that someone that's going to try to trick you and lead you and control you the way he does has to navigate all of that stuff. And I think it is really a testament to his skill as a structuralist in his writing that he is able to, in my opinion, perfectly do that. Like, I just was fully along for it. I was fully buying into it. Every moment that he, like, I felt, oh, it's very clear that the movie wants me to feel X in this moment, and I am absolutely feeling that in this moment.
I think he's even sort of transcending this management of expectations in a meta way to do social commentary about the nature of our expectations in society and the world, because he's not merely playing around with this idea of, rich guy who is actually kind of an idiot. Like, he creates for us the legend of Miles Braun is his name, I guess.
Yeah. Yep.
The legend of Miles Braun. All these characters are talking about him and what a genius he is, and how he says these weird things that seem crazy, but then they turn out to be genius. So, like, I guess we have to respect him. He's a mad genius, right? And then when you meet the character, you have basically bought that. You're basically like, oh yeah, here's the mad genius. Time to get to understand the nature of his mad genius. And then the movie, as the movie goes on, it does that thing that you just mentioned, where subtly in the background it's showing indications that maybe he's not all that. Or I think my favorite one of those was him letting on that, like, the murder mystery, the fictional murder mystery within the murder mystery that he had that was going to be solving his murder was written by a popular murder mystery writer, not him.
Yeah. Gillian
right?
Flynn. Yeah.
Gillian Flynn.
Girl.
And you were almost certainly assuming that he had created it because, well, he's the genius, right? Of course he's going to create the murder mystery. But no.
Yeah, same with the puzzle box, right? Same with the like this is his thing, that he sends complex puzzle boxes to all his friends. And it's like, no, he didn't actually do that either.
Yeah, it's just, he just has money. He just has money and he pays for these things. And so I think that's what I love about it, is it's actually asking us to step into our own lives and be like, how often is this happening to me, where I'm just buying hook, line, and sinker some narrative about some public figure and how they're either a genius or a philanthropist or a villain, for that matter, just because I've sort of been primed to accept it. And that's kind of how we operate, is we are easily led around to expectations.
I think you're so right. And I think this is where, like, the use of the Mona Lisa actually becomes perfect, because the Mona Lisa as a painting is basically famous for being famous. Like that, like I think it got famous when it was stolen, right? I think that was like, it was robbed from the Louvre, and that was part of what brought its rise to fame forward to eventually become one of the most famous paintings. Like, it's not particularly great painting. It's not like he tries to talk about the brushstrokes on it, and it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, it's just the Mona Lisa, and that's perfect to what Miles is. And I love that, because you're so right that the movie never tells us, like, what actually the idea that Andy had was, like this napkin. This napkin is this MacGuffin at the center of this movie, that she had the idea for what became Alpha, their company they started together that got them totally rich. She scribbled it down on a napkin. And the movie shows this napkin in close-up several times, and it's just like nonsense security buzzwords for the most part. Like, it's just like IT. Like, I saw the word security several times. I saw the word crypto. So, like, it's just kind of just made up nonsense, and it doesn't matter, because what the movie is doing, you're so right, is manipulating you into buying all this stuff. That, like, when Miles Braun is sitting there talking about disruption, and, like, the logical, rational part of your brain is like, I what does he mean by any of this? Like, what does any of this mean, actually? But like, the movie has primed you to be told that this guy is an eccentric genius, and so maybe this was just me, but I was just kind of like, I don't really get what he's saying here, but I guess that's my problem. I'm just not understanding. I'm just missing it. And then it so wonderfully like turns out on its head, and I think that's all part of it. That's all. It's wonderful. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think I might have known a little bit too much context about how the movie was supposed to be this, searing, dunk on rich guys, and so when they show, uh, in that scene when we see him saying this shtick about disruption, I think I was like, that sounds bad. Clearly what he thinks he's this visionary and all these people around him are cheerleading him on, but basically what he's saying is like, I have to be willing to just like ruin the world to make a buck.
Yeah.
Which is slightly different social commentary than what we were just saying about the idea of creating expectations in people. It's more directly just saying like, this is the attitude these people actually have, is that they're willing to destroy people and institutions to profit from it.
Yeah, I mean, Rian Johnson certainly wears his politics on his sleeve, and I don't think the movie minces any words with any of that, certainly. But I do think there is some more going on there, because I think it's very clear and present and talking about what he thinks about these type of people, this type of super rich, the attitude that these type of people have. But I also think he is kind of shining a light on us and how we prop these people up. I think that's the really interesting thing is the characters that Miles surrounds himself with, all these people that are also powerful people that are, as the movie says, sucking on the teat that is Miles Braun. And this idea that like they're so afraid of losing that they will lie, they will cheat, they will possibly murder to keep that going. And that's really fascinating as well, how not only are these people in their own ways destructive and dangerous, but that they bring what otherwise could possibly be decent people along the ride with them.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting to think just about those side characters who we really haven't talked about too much. But I think much like in Knives Out, they were this sort of ensemble of fantastic character actors where you're towing the line between drama and comedy in a lot of situations. And but yeah, like you just said, to consider like, what is their culpability in this? Because I think at different times you believe that any of them could be the murderer, actually.
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting choice, actually, that in the end, after it becomes a really easy choice for them, and after sort of it's clear that Miles is no longer ascendant, they all turn on him like hyenas.
Yeah, that's not even really necessarily a moment of triumph. I mean, you're like glad that Miles is finally getting his, but it's like these people have just like, the ship is burning, they're watching it sink, and then they're like, oh yeah, this guy, finally we're gonna like, I don't get the feeling that any of them necessarily learned something,
No, I totally agree, actually. Like they wouldn't lie, they wouldn't lie in service of justice until it was really clear that it didn't matter anymore.
Yeah. I love that line that Janelle Monáe says, is like, you would lie for a lie, but you won't lie for the truth. And that's so great. There's a lot of great little writing here. I love when Benoit Blanc says it's a dangerous thing to mistake speaking without thought for speaking the truth, don't you think? I love that so much.
Yeah, I like that.
The other thing I really like about the structure, and I promise we'll talk about some of these specific actors and then maybe like the actual directorial choices, which I thought were really great too. We'll get to that eventually, but the main thing I really wanted to talk to you about is the structure. It because of the way the movie's structured, and I watched it twice, by the way, because I felt like I had some time, because I watched it first when it came out last week, and I watched it again yesterday, and I was really curious how the movie worked on a second watch, because when you know how things are going, I think that changes it. And the thing that I love about what Rian Johnson did, and I think the attention to detail really pays off here, is that this every scene in the first hour of the movie has a distinct meaning within the timeline and the structure of the movie as you understand it at the time. But it also simultaneously has meaning based on what happens in the last half of the movie. And the thing that I love about it is it's entirely functional on both those things. So we'll cut to Benoit and see that he's like studying something or thinking about something, and the at the moment explanation is just he's a detective and he's curious and he's, oh, what's going on here, this is mysterious. But then you realize later he has a specific goal in mind, or he walks up to one of the characters and he starts talking to them and casually chatting with them. In the beginning it's just casual small talk. Then you realize, oh, he's actually interviewing this person. He's interviewing and trying to specifically gain information from him in this very moment. And it's really remarkable how the movie works on both those levels simultaneously. I think it's a real testament to the strength of this writing and how it's structured and how he did it all, that watching again really opens up the the glass onion for you.
That's great. I'm glad you got a chance to watch it twice. I have not, but I was thinking about that, in some cases while watching the movie, because, like when it's revealed that, obviously they arrange the situation, all of the scenes where he's talking, where he's like pretending to be super embarrassed that he was mistakenly invited to the party and all that stuff. It's like, oh wow, that instantly takes on a whole different complexion. That's going to land really differently when I watch it the second time.
Yeah.
And
the movie will do this really weird thing where it will cut to characters. Like it'll do a cut to Andy, and you don't necessarily know why in that moment, but the cut makes total sense in your full understanding of everything. And in that moment, in the real time moment, it's just, you just go, huh, okay. But then when you watch it again, you're like, oh, we're cutting to her specifically because we know in the future now that this thing that she just heard has specific resonance to her based on what she wants to do and what she's trying to do and everything that's going on here. It's just so clever.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to that, but I can see that being the case. Yeah, I can't wait to rewatch it.
Yeah, it works really well on rewatch for sure.
I just apropos of nothing, want to just mention that I love Ethan Hawke's cameo. It's just,
there's so many cameos in this movie, Matt. Like Ethan Hawke shows up for a single scene to deliver, I guess, the antidote to the coronavirus into the characters.
I love, like, that's my favorite. Actually, my favorite line read in the movie is him dosing people, and then Benoit being like, "So is this what?" And he just goes, "You're good." That's just my favorite. It's the best.
The idea that Miles Braun just has a either COVID cure or COVID preventative that he is just not sharing with anyone for some reason. I think that's really interesting because, the movie starts and obviously it declares itself like a COVID movie immediately, which is not something I expected at all. And I got to admit, my first reaction to that was like, I'm so sick of COVID. I just dealt with COVID like all winter break because my in-laws got it and it messed up our entire Christmas because they got sick. They're fine now, fortunately, but like I'm just so fucking sick of this pandemic. And like I was just like, I don't want to watch movies where we're dealing with the pandemic still. And so my initial reaction was frustration, but I think he actually mixes it in really well in the end.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I enjoyed some of the simpler gags actually, where it's just like, the woman at this enormous party, and she's just like, "It's okay, they're all in my pod."
They're all in my pod.
Which, I'm like, I think in another like 5 years, I'm gonna like have forgotten what that joke even means. But it is just great.
And then she's got the mesh mask on, which is just incredible.
That was genius. Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, you're right, but it's interesting because it like stops being a COVID movie pretty much after they get to the island because it doesn't matter.
Because he's got the cure and he's just not going to tell anyone.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of other cameos. Like Benoit is on a Zoom call playing Among Us with Stephen Sondheim, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Natasha Lyonne, and why can't I remember Murder, She Wrote? Angela Lansbury. They're
Uh-huh.
just, and you're just like, what? Two of those people, by the way, are deceased now, sadly.
Oh,
Both
yeah.
Stephen Sondheim and Angela Lansbury have passed away since that taping. But you're just like, what?
Yeah. And then Hugh
Hugh Grant.
Hugh Grant is his boyfriend.
Uh-huh.
And it's just for 2 seconds, right?
Yeah.
The 2 seconds when he opens the door.
And then Serena Williams is in the workout machine. She's there.
She's just on the clock.
It's just great. And then my favorite cameo is one that probably nobody that doesn't really know Rian Johnson very well will get, which is the Noah Segan character, who's the bum that's just like bumming around on the island, that's in like 3 scenes randomly.
Mm-hmm.
Noah Segan, who plays that character, is Rian Johnson's like best friend, and he puts him in every single one of his movies. And it's hilarious because he was one of the detectives in the original Knives Out, and now he's just this guy going through something on the beach, this unexplained character who's just there several times. It's just fucking hilarious.
That's great. I like the idea that that's the same character and he's just having a rough time.
Sure. Even though there's no sign of recognition between him and Benoit Blanc, which is actually even better.
Yes.
Oh, I lied. Actually, my favorite cameo, you know, the bong every time the hour goes, that's Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who has been in every single Rian Johnson movie.
Okay. Didn't he say that it was composed by some famous composer? Anyway,
yeah. But no, it was composed, but it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt doing the actual voice.
That's fantastic.
Oh yeah, we forgot about when Yo-Yo Ma appears at the party to give some information on classical music, because why not? There he is.
That was fantastic. I mean, that was funny to me because I watched it with my family, and my brother and mom are both like dedicated cellists, and so he showed up, and I was like, "Is that?" And they were like, "Yes."
It's just so good, man. It's just like people keep just popping into frame, and you're like, "Sure, why not? I'll go with it." And you're right. It does create a world and a tone that is more silly than it is mysterious, I guess. But I don't care. I think this is the place where this whole stuff functions the best, is kind of this over the top, zany, barely believable world that we're living in.
Yeah, I think that's that's the fun of having a setting oriented around like a hyper wealthy individual, whether you're talking about the modern day and it's like a crypto bro, or whether you're talking about 100 years ago and it's some mansion somewhere. It's like you get to do these ridiculous things that are not plausible, and the storytelling wise, you're permitted to do those things because of that conceit, and then you're like, oh, okay, you've gotten me to lower my defenses, and then we can have a lot more fun now, because ultimately that's what it's all about.
And at the end of the day, it's a movie in which the Mona Lisa is burned up by hydrogen fuel. So it's a silly, hilarious movie.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting because like there is currently like a push to like toward hydrogen as a green alternative to, I'm like, oh, so is this a specific hit on hydrogen specifically, or is this just a funny joke about how hydrogen is flammable?
I feel like he started with Catherine Hahn saying Hindenburg and then worked backwards from there. So I think I don't know if Rian Johnson has any knowledge about like movements within the energy industry. Realistically, I think it's just something that's like, oh, a solution that solves all our problems, but we don't want to actually take the time to test it out, because all he cares about is making as much money as quickly as possible.
Yeah, we're just gonna unsafely pipe it around or use this, whatever it is. Yeah, it's vague. It doesn't matter. It's supposed to be vague.
It's just a thing. Yeah. It's all like it's interesting because I don't know what more to say other than it's all just kind of delightful. And I agree with you. Like this is not like my favorite movie of the year. This is not one of my favorite movies ever. I think actually I still probably enjoy the original more than this. I thought the original was just like this super surprising, wonderful experience that like this movie came close to replicating, but not quite. I just I adored that movie. Like that, my time in the theater with the original Knives Out, I will treasure forever. So I don't even think it gets to that level, honestly. But for a thing that I popped on Netflix on a Thursday last week and just watched for a couple hours, I was absolutely delighted.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering. I figured we would talk about sort of comparing and contrasting a little bit more with Knives
Sure.
Out because it really does feel substantially different to me. Like you said earlier, Knives Out has its funny moments, but they're more just like incidental, you know, shreds of comedy in what is predominantly a dramatic whodunit where you actually care what's happening and like your main character is actually in mortal danger at various times and
Yeah, well, we like not even mortal danger, just like the way the way the movie structures itself. We learn very quickly that she is the who of the whodunit, and or at least she thinks she is early in the movie, and therefore the detective now becomes her enemy. And so you have the innate tension at like her attempting to get away or cover up her crime or not get caught by this incredibly astute detective. And so you have a lot of tension that's mined from that really just doesn't exist in this movie. I guess the most amount of tension you have in this movie is like will Janelle Monáe's character like be caught? Like, will they find out that her twin sister is actually dead, and she'll be caught? But even that, like, I don't think you really feel that tension. You know?
yeah, the subject matter in that movie just doesn't lend itself to comedy nearly as much.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this movie pretty quickly establishes like this is going to be a silly movie. I mean, even when and maybe you could say this undercuts things, but like even when she is shot on the staircase and you think that she's dead in the beginning, or not in the beginning, I guess in like the middle, you're not too broken up about it because you're like, I don't really feel like I knew that character.
Yeah, I don't know who that character is. Yeah,
It would be, it's nothing like the protagonist of Knives Out, who we did care about quite a lot. Which is again, it's like, well, it's a totally different movie. It's going for a totally different thing.
But I mean, I don't know. Maybe you disagree. I think like then we spend the next 20 minutes going back and kind of relearning everything and learning who she is, and then we kind of replay the moment where she gets shot, and then I think you do feel a little bit of something at that moment. But also I feel like at that moment you kind of realize that there's no way she could possibly be dead, because that would just shift the movie too much.
Yeah, I mean, I won't say that I just was certain that she wasn't dead, but I was like, man, tonally, the idea of her being shot dead on the staircase there really doesn't fit with the movie that I feel like we're doing here. And then of course,
after doing everying else to get to that point, it would just be like, wow, okay.
Yeah, that'd be super depressing. Yeah.
But I mean, like we still, I think the other reason that I don't know if that scene like was on me emotionally, because it's shot kind of beautifully in this really interesting way, and this gets me to, I think Rian Johnson is doing a lot of fun stuff with his camera in this movie. I love how that whole sequence played out with the the glass from as the bullet goes through the mirror, and like then it doesn't shatter, it just cracks in this really interesting way, and the camera really wants to drink up that moment. The camera does this again and again with the glass onion bar set and that thing at the center of it, with the spider web looking thing. Rian Johnson uses a lot of rack zooms. I don't know if you noticed that, which is not something stylistically we do in modern filmmaking anymore. We usually do like slow push-ins, but like there's a scene when I think Benoit and Janelle Monáe's character first meeting in the flashback, where like we rack zoom in and out on her several times throughout the scene as we move through the emotions of the scene. And I just thought that was really interesting. I think that's kind of a throwback to older murder mystery type stuff. He's doing, this is a very pretty movie, I think. I don't know. Do you think so?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. No, I mean, there's one thing that I think reminded me of my childhood book, 11th Hour, is that is it's a gorgeous book. That's what's compelling about it to a child, is like every page is this lush, beautifully detailed. I don't know if it's a painting or just a very, very detailed colored pencil drawing, but it doesn't matter. It's super detailed and fun to look at. And with a lot of like depth to what's happening, and that's how I felt about a lot of this movie. Actually, visually speaking, is you were almost overwhelmed by the sort of spectacle of it. Like they, pretty much any place that you are in the mansion, it's this really interesting environment where there's like layers and there's like so many different things to look at, and you're not really sure what's important.
Yeah, especially
And
when one of those things is Kate Hudson, because whoa, whoa.
yes, definitely. So there's a lot going on visually in a way that I found, great and beautiful, and also kind of perfect for the kind of movie that it was trying to be. Like if it were, if this were an older movie, then they'd be doing the same things, except instead of, a glass kind of Art Deco, um, mansion, it would have been a Baroque, not, I think Baroque isn't quite the word, but like an ornate and, lavishly furnished mansion, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, they get to take Ed Norton's character's like absurdity and really use it to its fullest, because it is this ridiculous thing with like this horrible, like completely tasteless mix of styles where like I
Yeah.
can't remember exactly where it was in the house, but there's just this like classical Greek architecture, like Pantheon looking thing just like stuck in the middle of a room with modern art everywhere, and it's just like what is that? That's terrible, and it's awful, like aesthetically, but it actually is used to create a lot of dynamism in everywhere our characters are sitting, and like where these conversations are happening, what is going on. It uses we can pull in all different kinds of architectural stuff because it's just all here. Everything's here. It's just tossed here, because anything that has any sense of importance or class to this guy, he's going to throw in his house.
I totally agree. I mean, I almost interrupted myself a second ago when I called it Art Deco, because I was like, actually, it's a mess is what it is.
Yeah.
But Art Deco is what I kind of mentally rounded it off to.
Sure. And I don't think that's wrong.
Yeah. It's definitely just tasteless, right? It's the definition of like, there is no overriding vision of aesthetics. There is just chaos, just a total lack of any kind of taste or aesthetic discipline. It's just like a guy who has too much money. It's a perfect visual representation of a guy who has too much money. Yeah.
And again, to kind of reiterate on a point we made earlier, every character is like looking around going, whoa, oh, look, this is so impressive. Oh my. And like you, the audience, are like, am I the wrong one for thinking this looks bad? Is it me? Is it like, and then you kind of find yourself just going, oh, I guess I just don't understand art. Okay. All these people are saying how good this looks. I guess I'm the wrong one. It's remarkably effective.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's great. It's a very good script, I will say.
It is. I like one of these days, Matt, I think we have to do Deconstructing Rian Johnson, because I really think he's just really, really interesting. And I wonder what this movie looks like after having spent a lot of time diving through all his earlier stuff, because his first movie is a movie called Brick that I think you will legitimately get a kick out of. It's closer to this movie in that I think it's kind of like a detective story. But I don't want to spoil too much of it, but we'll watch it one day and talk about it, because it's pretty great.
Well, we did sort of vow to cover writer-directors on Deconstructing Directors, and so he would be a good fit for that.
And I think the only reason we didn't do him earlier was we were kind of waiting for him to have more films under his belt before we really dove into him. And I think he's got one more Knives Out movie. Netflix bought 2 of them from him after the success of the first movie, so maybe we'll wait until that third one comes out, and then we can deconstruct Rian Johnson.
Sounds good.
You know what that means, though? It means we're gonna have to do an episode on fucking The Last Jedi again. And there's I love The Last Jedi, but there's nothing more in this world that I would rather talk about. Like, I would talk about anything else other than talk about the fucking Last Jedi again. I'm so sick. Every time we talk about The Last Jedi, we get emails from people about, get over it. I don't care. You hate it. Great. I don't care.
Yeah. I know. We just have to talk specifically about the directing and not. Yeah. But see, I say that, but I'm immediately like, no, the point of doing Deconstructing Directors to think about the storytelling sensibilities of the person. And
Mm-hmm.
if anything, I think there are a lot of similarities between this movie and The Last Jedi in the subversion of expectations, which is the thing everybody criticized in The Last Jedi. But it's like, well, this movie is really doing the same thing. I think you
Mm-hmm.
just, to the extent that I feel any interest in steel manning the anti-Last Jedi position, it's just like, well, you weren't expecting that kind of thing in a Star Wars movie,
Yeah.
whereas you definitely are expecting that kind of thing in a whodunit murder mystery,
Sure.
unless you're Ben Shapiro.
Oh my god, Ben Shapiro. Do you want me to I actually I had this open and then I closed it, so I have to go open it again. But do you want me to read to you what Ben Shapiro said about this
Yes,
fucking movie?
because I didn't actually read it, I just heard about it.
So Ben Shapiro, this is the context of this is important, by the way. On December 26th, the day after Christmas, Boxing Day, at 6:50 in the morning, Ben Shapiro goes on a 25 tweet rant about Rian Johnson's Glass Onion, a movie that we've just described as not the best movie in the world, very silly, but a fun time.
Mm-hmm.
Not something anyone should get bent out of shape about ever.
Mm-hmm.
Here he goes. I'm not going to read all of them, by the way, because eventually he just shifts to complaining about the politics, and I could give less shits about Ben Shapiro's opinion on someone's politics. But here's his opinion on the writing of the movie. I regret to inform you that Glass Onion is actively bad. What does that mean? I will discuss first the actual writing of the movie, followed by the politics of it. Both suck. Spoilers follow. First, the writing. The first half of the movie is a complete misdirect and a waste of time. Well, those are two different things. Like, yes, it is a complete misdirect. Does not necessarily mean it's a waste of time. We only find out about the actual murder we're supposed to investigate full 1 hour and 10 minutes into the film, as well as an entirely new backstory. Miles never invited Blanc, and Andy has a twin sister masquerading as her. We're actively deceived by the writer.
Actively deceived? What?
Why the misdirect? Because the story itself, in the purest form of incredible laziness. Wait, that's not even a right. Because the story itself, in the purest form of incredible laziness.
I think he meant to say is, but
yeah,
he's
probably.
just so angry that he's making typos.
Remember, 6:50 in the morning. He woke up the day after Christmas and said, I need to get this off my Ben Shapiro chest. It relies on not one, not two, but three bad writing tropes: an identical twin, a comprehensive journal, and a moron of a murderer. It does rely on those three things. I don't know. You can't just say they're bad writing tropes and they become bad writing tropes.
Right. Well, that's great. I'm going to become the most powerful literary critic ever by just saying what the bad tropes are.
You can write your way out of literally any scenario given an identical twin, which removes the need for linear coherence, a comprehensive journal, which explains everything, and a moron for a murder, which removes the necessity for plot logic. Okay, that's just wrong. That's just wrong.
Yeah.
So instead, we get an hour of wasted time because we have to make up for the fact that the murder is perfectly obvious from moment one. Rian Johnson actually knows this. He can read Rian Johnson's mind, by the way. That's why by the end, he is telling the audience via Blanc that everything Miles Braun did is dumb. Read the entire plot of the film. This is just the lazy writer's way out. You know what you have written is bad, so you just say it's bad. And hey, look, now you're clever and cynical. That's not.
Yeah,
it's wrong. It's just wrong.
No, well, I mean, he's missing the commentary aspect of it.
The theme of the movie.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. At the very like I guess if you've pre-decided, I'm just going to interrupt you here. If you've pre-decided that you hate the politics of the movie, like just like because you're Ben Shapiro, then I can then you're going to find all that stuff annoying, I would guess, because it's like, well, the theme is something that you find annoying. So all the stuff that he does to cleverly support the theme and weave the theme throughout the story is just annoying you even more. But Ben Shapiro mistakes being annoyed by the contents of the theme for being annoyed by the execution of the film. That's what's happening here. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, this is this trend I actually see a lot, and specifically with Rian Johnson, because I saw this a lot in the critics of The Last Jedi, which, again, if you don't like I don't care if you don't like The Last Jedi, but like a lot of people would just say like in this movie, Ryan Johnson does this, and that's just bad writing.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, that's not anything. You can't
Yeah.
just say something's bad writing and it becomes bad writing. You have to explain why it's bad writing, actually. You can't just say having a twin is bad because it removes linear coherence. Are you saying the movie is not coherent? If you're saying that, what do you mean?
Right.
What is not coherent about the movie?
Why is it bad to remove linear coherence?
Yeah, why? And why is it bad? Even if that's true, if the movie does not have linear coherence, why is that bad writing?
Yeah, I mean,
It's like this shortcutting of just like, you can just make a declarative statement like he did at the beginning. This movie is actively bad, which again, what is that worse than passively bad?
Yes, it is. Yeah, no, I mean, this is, actively bad criticism is what this is. Because I'm so annoyed by just this whole idea of like, and anyone who uses the word objective when they're talking about criticism, for example, is doing this sort of thing, which is sort of understandable because I think people want to find, like, what are the rules? What are the rules that I can judge things by? Because it's all so confusing. And the fact is, it's like, look, there's not any like in one movie you can say, I didn't like this because I was confused. And then I might agree with you and say, yeah, like that was really confusing and unclear, and that was like that was a mistake. In another movie, you can say, I didn't like this because I was confused, and I might say, well, I think the movie is asking you to think about that, or examine why you were confused, or confront the feeling of confusion, or sit with the feeling of confusion, or any number of things. Anything about any movie can be contextualized as being brilliant if you are willing to grant it the benefit of the doubt, right? I'm not saying that this means all movies are secretly brilliant. Like it's just for the purpose of doing criticism. You can't make statements like this is bad writing. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think a perfect example of this is his critique that the reveal at the end of the movie is actually that the murderer is just super dumb, and that's why we couldn't solve the murder at first, because he's just super dumb, and it's a convenient thing. And it's like, no, actually, that's what the movie's saying, is that like earlier in the movie, Benoit literally says it couldn't be Miles Braun because no one would be stupid enough to kill the woman weeks after she lost a court case against him for ownership of a company. That would be the dumbest thing possible. No one would be that stupid. And then he dismisses it. And that's part of what we're saying here, right? Is that the reason this guy has been able to survive so long and been so successful is that everyone is just assuming this level of intelligence that isn't there. And again, we, the audience, are doing it too. He's creating this world. He's fostering this relationship we have with this character that we just met that allows us to internalize his mythos. There's no reason for it. There's nothing in the movie that says he is this person, but we are just told over and over again he is this person, and so he is this person. And so the reveal that he's actually an idiot and that the crime is stupid and we couldn't solve it until the very end because it was so fucking stupid is the entire point. And that's not lazy writing. That's like, you might not think it's effective writing. It might not work on you emotionally, but like, lazy, I just... that like, oh, I couldn't write my way out of this, and so I just decided, oh, it's because he's dumb. This is just a dumb movie. That's stupid. And I want to make this clear. I'm not saying this specifically because I'm actually taking Ben Shapiro's opinions as a literary critic seriously. I'm not, but the thing that like upset me, like this mostly just made me laugh when I read this stuff. But the thing that upset me about it is I see in a lot of what he says a lot of other, nuggets of armchair criticism that I see floating out there on the internet. Like, this is like Ben Shapiro probably just like Miles Braun, just like cribbed and stole everything he's saying here from other people he's read talk about movies. And so that's the frustrating part to me, is that like we talk about movies in this very, very static way sometimes. Yeah,
no, I agree. I'm not letting Ben Shapiro live rent free in my head for more than the time that it takes to chuckle about this with you. But no, you're right. It's can be frustrating to watch people make bad faith criticisms, or and even if they didn't like something, it's like that's fine. You
Yeah.
can not like it. It just irks me when you don't understand why.
Yeah. Or don't understand why, because understanding the why of you not liking something is actually really complicated, but you don't even try, right? You're just like, it's bad. It's bad. That's why it's bad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's probably movies that I don't like because I don't like the message, even though
Mhm.
they're executed well. So that would be,
Yeah.
me being Ben Shapiro in this situation. But
Mhm.
I try to be self aware about it at least. So
The only thing I'll say about his political rant about the whole thing is this idea that, first of all, he immediately declares Miles Braun as Elon Musk, despite the fact that he clearly doesn't know how movies work, because turns
uh-huh,
out they're written a long time ago.
uh-huh.
But he's like, so none of these people in this closest circle would benefit from taking down the most powerful man in the world. Any of these people would immediately become rich and famous by taking down the most powerful person in the world. And I was like, I mean, yeah, maybe, but you're not listening. He's terrified them into subservience. Like that's again one of the points of the movie, is that he's
Yeah,
this incredibly scary while also very, God, what's the word I'm thinking of? I can't.
incompetent or
No, like he's scary, but he's also like, he's a smooth talker.
yeah,
He's good at schmoozing with people, and so like he can scare you and win you over to him at the same time. Like all these people, they were around him. They have to know he's stupid, but just like with the glass, he told you he wasn't enough times that you started believing it. And so I fully believe that while these people probably could have whistleblown on him and been okay, that none of them would do it because they don't even see that as an option.
yeah. I totally agree. I mean, it seems pretty obvious that he is this manipulator, this
Hmm.
fairly cold manipulator, and they all know that, and they all know what the score is. Like I thinking right now about the scene where um Dave Batista. So we don't know what's happening the first time this happens, but the long and short of it is Dave Batista shows him the phone, and the phone says that Andy has been murdered like a week ago. And
Hmm.
Andy shows him the phone and is like, this changes things, doesn't it? And the subtext of that statement is, I know that you murdered her,
Yeah.
and you know that I know that. And now I'm blackmailing you, and you're going to support my show, despite the fact that you previously said you weren't going to support my show. And then Ed Norton is like, yeah, man, totally. And that's an interaction that only happens between people who are like basically enemies already.
Yeah.
But one of them is just sort of in terror of the other, right? It's not
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
yeah. It's just
No. To me, it was completely obvious why all these people would stick by this guy. Like that's the driving force of a lot of what the movie's saying, I think. And to miss that is kind of absurd to me. But
yeah.
whatever. Fuck you, Ben Shapiro. Done
Yep.
done with that. Okay, Matt. So I think here at the end we have to talk about how we're gonna vote. This is hard, actually. As much as we really enjoyed this movie, I don't know. I'm gonna make you go first so I can think about it.
Well, I'm gonna make it even harder for you because I'm gonna say no. I don't think this is a canon movie. Like I don't actually strictly think that it's better than Knives Out. And it's not just like one of the great movies of all time that I would just insist that everybody watch, which is sort of my ultimate backstop rubric of canon movies for me is like is like this is a list of movies where I will stand behind it and be like anybody will love or at least be highly enriched by this movie.
Hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, this is a pretty fun movie. I enjoyed it, watched it with my family, had a good time. I don't really think that I'm going to be thinking about this movie a year from now, um, honestly. So
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I think the cop out that I'm going to latch onto and hold onto for dear life
uh,
is it feels wrong for me to vote yes on this movie if I don't think it's as good as the original, which is currently not in the canon, right? So like, yes, perhaps there could be a world in which both of these movies end up in our list, but I don't see that happening, and I think the original is better. I do. I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I had a lot of fun with it both times I watched it, and I'll probably watch it again at some point. But I think the first one's better, and that's okay. It's not bad. That's not something I'm like, oh man, I was really hoping for this to surpass the first one. No, I'm fine. I'm fine with what this movie is, but I think I agree with you. I think it's not quite good enough, and in a list that doesn't have the original Knives Out in it, how could it possibly have Glass Onion in it?
Yeah, I agree.
So that's a no for us, but of course it's up to y'all at home. And I think this movie, was reviewed well by the critics, received well by almost all of the audience except for Ben Shapiro. So I think I know how this outcome is going to turn out, but we'll see.
Yeah. Don't let us sway you too much. This is just our personal conception of the canon.
Yeah, definitely. So go to the link in the show notes of this very episode. It will take you over to our Patreon account. That's patreon.com/doofmedia. There is a poll there. You do not have to be a patron to vote in the poll. It is open to the public. So you just click on one of those radio buttons and click vote, and your vote will be recorded. So head on over there and vote, and we'll meet back up next week to talk about the results and see what happens with Rian Johnson's Glass Onion. All right, Matt, it is our final episode of 2022. We had an incredible year. We hit 200 episodes this year. That's wild. And we did a lot of things on all of our podcasts. We had 1 million downloads on our Kingslingers podcast, which is insane. It's a pretty good year for us, and I think it was a pretty good year for entertainment as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I watched a bunch of stuff this year that really blew me away. And sort of, I don't know, maybe this is dramatic, but sort of revitalized my hopes for films and TV shows. Because I don't know, I vaguely remember us talking at some point in the relatively recent past and being like, why does everything suck now? Basically, I mean, I think we said it in different words, but I think I was pretty like, wow, there's like a streak of just mediocre stuff had come out. So yeah, I'm very, very happy with how things stand. I have my top 5 list here. I'm excited to talk about it. I know you do too. Can't wait to get into it.
All right, so let's start with you. What is one of your 5 things? Are these in actual order, or do you just list 5 things?
I think I'm going to try to go from least favorite to mostest favorite.
Okay.
First of all, are we talking about all media? Because I have a book on here.
Yeah, I have a book on here on mine too.
Okay. I'll go from least favoritist, but also I liked it a lot. Wheel of Time TV show.
Okay.
And admittedly, huge component of nostalgia and like never believing they were going to make this TV show, and then having really, really low expectations, and then it coming out and really, really kind of charming me and me being happy with a lot of the decisions that they made. And finding it like, hey, this is like about the best job you could do with a Wheel of Time TV show adaptation. I'm pretty dang pleased with this. It's not like the best thing ever, but just really, really good for me personally. And so I was just thought that was great.
Great. Unfortunately, Matt, that came out in 2021. So you
God
fail.
Damn it.
No, I think it finished in early January. So you technically, first of all, I have stuff on here that didn't come out in 2022. I just read it or played it or watched it in 2022, so I'm counting it. So
yeah, it occurred to me as I was speaking that maybe this didn't come out in 2022. But yeah, I think it started coming out in November 2021. So I'm going to count it. I'm going to count it. God damn it.
Sure.
Okay.
I think it's funny because both the Wheel of Time TV show and the Rings of Power TV show, the two big Amazon Prime fantasy series that came out in the last couple of years, are two things you and I mostly liked. And like both things, when we released episodes on them, were like, I usually agree with you guys, but not on this one. We got comments for both Rings of Power and Wheel of Time on that, where people just did not like those things at all.
Right. I mean, just while we're at it, I'm going to go ahead and just also mention the Rings of Power and that I enjoyed that too, just so that people can be mad at me about that. Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. The best Lord of the Rings show on television in 2020.
In 2022. Yeah. All right. What about you?
So I wanted to make sure I got something video gamey on here because I play a lot of video games and I like a lot of video games. And I thought about briefly putting the hit new video game that just came out this year called World of Warcraft on this
Uh,
list, because I've been playing a lot of that, and technically an expansion did come out this year, so I could have done that, but as much as I'm enjoying my time with that, there's another game I'd much rather talk about, which is a game that didn't come out in 2022, but I played it in 2022, and that is the DLC for the video game Outer Wilds called Echoes of the Eye. I believe it came out last year, but I just played it this year. We've briefly talked about Outer Wilds before, Matt, in that I told you this was like one of my favorite video game experiences ever. And for some reason, it took me forever to get to this DLC. I finally did like a month ago. I streamed it all on our Twitch channel. It's twitch.tv/doofmedia if you ever want to go there and check out some other stuff we're doing. And I had so much fun with it. And it reminded me exactly of why I love Outer Wilds so much, why it's this incredibly unique, wonderful experience that I will treasure for the rest of my life. And the DLC just continues that trend perfectly. It's touching, it's fun, it's uh, you're solving mysteries and putting clues together in a not quite glass onion kind of way, but just an incredibly satisfying way. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and it's great additional content for it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know that this was a big thing for you back when you played it first.
Mm-hmm.
It's still on my list of games to play, and I can't wait to get to it.
Awesome. What's number 2 for you?
Number 2, and yeah, I'm not being too strict about this order here, but I'm going to say the Batman, the new Batman film, which I'm pretty sure came out in 2022.
It did. You're good.
And just like, what a delightful interpretation of a franchise that I was really kind of ready to be done with. I loved Pattinson's like interpretation of the character. I thought it was just it was one of those movies that I got like really obsessed with for like 2 weeks, and then I kind of got over it. But like I just loved every choice in how they put that movie together, and it felt like a special thing, and it kind of rejuvenated my hope that when you have the right mixture of artists and creators and so forth, they can really breathe life into a subject matter that maybe you thought you were bored of. Yeah, like that movie a lot.
No, it's a great pick. I really enjoyed that movie too. I was so done with Batman, and the fact that I am now not done with Batman, I think speaks the world of it for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, my next one is a little book called Watership Down, which, let me check my notes, did not come out in the year 2022. But you and I read this book in 2022, and this was, I think, my favorite book that I read this year. It's been on my list of to be read forever, and I'm so glad. I'm very, like, this is why I put it on this list, because I'm very glad that I got to read it now for the first time. Like at this point in my life, like it just the level of appreciation I have for this book, like I think I would have enjoyed it if I read it as a kid, but like the level of appreciation I have for this book at this time in my life, at this level of experience I have with reading and understanding literature and stories and all this stuff, it made me fall in love with it to a level I just never would have expected. And it was just an absolute joy to read and an absolute joy to talk about with you. I loved, like maybe just I'll say our conversation on Watership Down is one of my top things in 2022 because I really loved that talk. I loved meeting with our book club listeners and just chatting about this wonderful book for a couple hours.
Yeah, I agree. It's just perfect storytelling. It kind of reminds me of my great love of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where it's like that's not a great film, Matt. It's like, well, it's just perfect for what it is. Like, perfect storytelling fundamentals, and I would say the same of Watership Down. Yeah, I didn't put that on my list, but the only reason is that I was like just skimming through things, and it just didn't come to my attention. So I totally would put that on my list if it had come to my attention.
Plus, it's technically cheating, so I don't blame you for not putting it on there.
Well, it's something that we read in 2022, but so I will say the book that I put on my list is Piranesi, which is another book club book. I don't even know if you made me compare Piranesi with Watership Down. Like such wildly different things, but just like in terms of an experience, just like that, just the rare experience that you can have with a book where you're just swept up into it and it's just this other world that now just lives with you forever.
Yeah. Mhm.
That would be Piranesi, and that was our January book club book. So
Yeah, and I think the only reason why I actually looked at that one and considered it, and the only reason I didn't put it on is because I had originally read it right after we finished Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. So I couldn't even use the excuse of, well, I read it in 2022 because I technically the first time was before that. But I totally agree with you. What a wonderful book. I will treasure that. We just went through this whole thing at my house. I have too many fucking books, and we got a bunch of new toys for my son, and so I had a bookshelf in my office that was just like, we don't have room for this thing anymore. I have to get rid of this bookshelf, which means I have to take every book off that bookshelf and consolidate it on the bookshelves in my living room, which means I had to get a bunch of books to donate. I had to. I made myself take a bunch of books. Like we got rid of like 40 books over the past few days, and we got to that one and my wife picked it up and I was like, no, absolutely not. That's staying on the shelf. I will treasure that. I know I will read that again. So yeah, no, that's a great pick.
Yeah, I might audiobook that one again. Yeah. Cool.
Are we on my third? Yeah.
Number 3.
My third pick is a little film called Top Gun Maverick.
Nice.
I don't know if this is my favorite movie of the year. I don't think it's my favorite movie of the year, but it might be one of my favorite experiences of all time. Because like I was thinking about Avatar, and I was thinking about whether I wanted to put The Way of Water on this list, which is a movie I really loved. And also I kind of expect that you're about to say Avatar: The Way of Water, so I didn't want to put it on my list because I knew you were going to do it. But Avatar, I went in with a certain level of expectation. Like I remember our experience rewatching it last year and how much I loved it and how excited I was for this movie. I did not go into Top Gun Maverick with any expectation. I went into this movie kind of like I think most people did, which is like, all right, I'll see it. But like, why did we need a new Top Gun movie 3 decades later? Really? Tom Cruise still flying in airplanes? And I forgot the Tom Cruise of it all, which is that he's a superhuman alien. And I feel bad for people that missed this movie in the theater because it was such an experience. Watching this movie for the first time with the low level of expectation I had was just incredible. And I loved this movie so much. I loved the highs and lows and the pressure and the how did they do that, and to listening to 57-year-old Tom Cruise grunt as the airplane G's ripped his stomach apart. It was all just so wonderful. I love Top Gun Maverick. What a fucking movie.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I think me and my kids have watched it several times now. It's just one that we really enjoy going back to because it's just so fun and it's just well done. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will say at this point, I did not put Avatar on my list. Half of the reason was I was like, I bet Scott will put it on his list. so we're in a sort of gift of the Magi situation. But the other half of the reason was I don't want to put something on this list that I suspect might be recency bias.
Sure.
Now I do think this is a great movie, and I love this movie, but I just saw it, and like a lot of the love of it is like I just saw it, and I want to have some time to sit on it. I want to rewatch it before I start saying it was like the best thing in 2022. Definitely.
No,
like the act of sitting in the theater watching it, I would say was a peak experience of 2022. But what's crazy is I had enough other things in 2022 that it might just legitimately not even be in the top 5. So, which is a shocking thing to say, actually. So my next pick is I'm going to cheat, and it is Mike Flanagan. And the reason I say that is this year we watched both the TV show Midnight Mass and the film Dr. Sleep. I loved both of those things a tremendous amount. If I had to pick one of them to put forward, I would say Midnight Mass is like amazing. Didn't come out this year, obviously, but I saw it this year. And then Dr. Sleep also didn't come out this year, but like Dr. Sleep is probably more approachable since it's just a film. But I just found both of these utterly delightful and charming and, harrowing and shocking and horrible and just everything. and really kind of had no awareness of Mike Flanagan prior to this year, and now I am a huge Mike Flanagan stan.
That makes me so happy. We're gonna get you to watch the Spookies one day. We'll make it happen.
You know, he might be my gateway drug into the Spookies.
I don't think you're ever just gonna suddenly love horror because Mike Flanagan wrote a couple of good horror TV shows, but I think you will definitely enjoy those horror TV shows for sure.
That's fair.
So my fourth one is a bit of a cheat as well, because I started listing out all the TV shows that I really, really loved, and it got too long, so I just wrote down TV.
Wow, I feel a lot less bad now.
But I mean, specifically, I'm talking about shows like Andor, shows like Severance, which I know you haven't watched yet, but you will one day. Shows like The Bear, which is a show that I think I briefly talked to you about after I finished watching it. A show on Hulu about a guy, top Michelin star chef going to work at a local sandwich shop in Southside Chicago, and wonderful, wonderful show. We're in this really weird place in the world of streaming right now, where suddenly all these people are realizing that they can't make any money in streaming, and so stocks are tanking and companies are making really dumb, stupid decisions. But while that's happening, we're also continually releasing just incredible top tier television that reminds me of why I love the medium of television so much. And I just really, really loved. I watched so much TV this year. I watched more TV than movies this year for many different reasons. One of them, which is just I am in love with the long form storytelling method, and I think some of the best shows I've ever watched came out this year. And so it's a cheat. I cheated. I'm sorry, but I couldn't not list all those shows. So that's it. TV.
Okay, yeah, that's great, and I will simply segue. I'll simply segue into my last one, because that's a perfect segue, which is that my number one, I should say, my number one favorite thing was Andor.
Unsurprising.
Which you mentioned there. And I absolutely adored this show, and then I rewatched almost the whole thing. I think I'm 2 episodes shy of a full rewatch with my family over Christmas. And I unfortunately, Scott, I just came to love it even more.
Oh no, that's terrible. I feel so bad for you.
And just like really appreciate so many of the things, like, because the show is just, you could make, like, every part of it is great. Like, I know I sound hyperbolic, like I sound crazy here, but like, you could make the music terrible and it would still be a good show. You could make the editing much worse and it would still be a good show. It just so happens that both of those things are amazing, and like innovative and perfect, and just everything about it is perfect, and I just love it so much, and I want to champion Andor.
Yeah. For more on Andor, see our entire whole big episode on it, which I was very proud of that episode. We did a good job talking about that show, and it's a very good show.
I agree, and I've even since doing the rewatch, I have even more to say. But anyway,
maybe one day when season 2 comes out, we'll have to revisit season 1 before season 2 comes out.
Yep, don't have to twist my arm. Yep, so that's my top 5. What's your final one?
My final one, I figured I would, on a top 5 list my actual favorite movie of 2022. So like make the list have some level of rule to it. And so my last one is a film that we've talked about on episode already. It was actually on a canon episode. It was the film Everything Everywhere All at Once. My hands down favorite movie of 2022. I don't want to rehash what I said too much on that show, because like I said, we did a whole show on it, but I was totally blown away by this movie. Just the originality of it, the freshness and the emotionality of it. And I've watched it many, many times since we watched it the first time, which is not something I do very often anymore. But I think it's a sign of how much this movie means to me, is that I've watched it 3 or 4 times since the original time I saw it. And it continues to work on me. It continues to be effective. I still find new things to appreciate about it. The emotional beats, the moments that landed really hard on me the first time continue to land equally as hard. It's just an incredible like miracle of a film that the coolest thing about it, maybe that's not fair, but one of the coolest things about it is that it made a shitload of money, which almost never happens with these like weird out of the box like genre films. Like they just never do good. They don't attract an audience. And this movie somehow inexplicably attracted a very dedicated, huge audience. It made over $100 million for a movie this size is incredible. And I love it. And I'm so glad that movies like that exist. And like I said, I think when we reviewed it, this is a movie that reminded me of why there are movies, in a world where I listed TV in general as my number 2 best thing of 2022. Here's a movie that reminds me of why I love movies specifically.
That's awesome. Yeah, and of course I really enjoyed that one as well. I don't think I rewatched it, and maybe I would feel sort of closer to your level of love for it if I had done so. I think it's really interesting that we have almost no overlap in our lists, other than sort of both giving a high rank to Andor. I don't have any point there. I think we both liked a lot of the things that we saw this year, but it's just interesting to me that we kind of put different things in our very top slots.
I will say, like, to full disclosure, like I do consider the fact that you're also making a list while I'm making my list, and I'm considering content. So it's not like I'm lying here, but I'm also like, I'm pretty sure Matt's going to do this, and this. Like, that's why, like, I knew I wanted to put Andor, but like, I knew you were going to put Andor. So I was like, how can I put Andor and not just have the same list as Matt? And so I worked a way to cheat. So I think that's partially the reason, but yeah, I mean, like, I think it is cool that there's just so many different things out there.
Yeah. And I totally would have picked Watership Down if I had remembered it. But yeah, no, I mean, so that goes to show you Watership Down's great, Andor's great, and then here's a bunch of other cool stuff to check out if you haven't.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that's it, right? Yeah. That's 2022. Good year.
Yeah, it was a good year entertainment-wise.
Yep. All right. So that's all we have for you folks this year. If you have any opinions on Glass Onion or on any of our lists, or want to share your list of top 5 things of 2022, feel free to reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on Twitter @doofmedia. You can also go to our subreddit r/doofmedia and find the thread for this episode and post it there.
That's right. If you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to subscribe. You can find us on any podcatcher platform.
And you can find this and all of our shows over at our website, doofmedia.com. And if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You are already going to be heading over to patreon.com/doofmedia to cast your vote for Glass Onion. So while you are there, maybe take a look around and see if it's something you want to help support. And we will, of course, appreciate that and give you a bunch of cool bonus things. So check it out. And maybe you could become a member of the council that nominates these films for us. So you could see your favorite movie get into the canon.
Yes, forever. Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Each review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, folks, that is it for us in 2023. We will pick up with Sir Ridley Scott, who we will probably finish before the end of 2023, Matt. I think we'll get to the end of Deconstructing Ridley Scott.
Oh, God.
But right. Our first film of the new year will be Ridley Scott's The Martian, and that'll be next week.
Can't wait.
Me neither. We'll see you then.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.